first thing I would have people do is to really decide what they want in their life. I mean, that's the first step. Decide what your future could look like. Get clear on what that vision is and write down the specifics of what you want in your life, whether it's with your family or your career or with a relationship, whatever it is. Get clear on what that vision is of yourself in the future. And then write down the emotions of how you'll feel when it happens. Will you be joyful? Will you be enthusiastic? Will you be filled with energy? Will you love your life and be in a constant state of gratitude? And now you have a clear intention and elevated emotion. And every morning when you start your day, before you open your eyes and reach for your cell phone and check your WhatsApp and your texts and your Facebook and your Twitter and your Instagram and your LinkedIn and your emails, before you plug yourself back into your same familiar world, sit there and get very clear on what that future will be like and begin to emotionally embrace it before it happens. And if you do that properly, you're moving into a new state of being. And then at certain points in your day, just break and ask yourself how you're doing. How am I doing? Am I doing well? Am I losing it? Am I falling from grace? Then recalibrate. And at the end of your day, ask yourself how you did. And if you keep changing your state of being over and over again, your state of being is your personality, and your personality creates your personal reality. And when you start seeing those changes in your life and those synchronicities, the energy and the excitement of the surprise of that event is going to inspire you to create again. And I think that's how we move from victims in our lives to creators of our lives.
Most people, their brain is organized to reflect everything they know in their life. Their brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact. So then most people think in the past. And feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences. So if you're feeling the same way every single day, it means nothing new is happening in your life. And if those feelings are driving your thoughts, then you're thinking in the past. So most people's biology, for the most part, living in the past. So then when you begin to combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, a person can begin to move their biology from living in the past to living in the future. Here's an example. 81% of people that are in a depression study that are given a placebo, 81% of those people respond as well as the people that are given the drug, which means they're making their own pharmacy of antidepressants. Their brain is the greatest pharmacist there ever was, and their brain already knows how to make those chemicals because there's receptor sites in the brain that receive those chemicals. The problem is that most people do it once or twice and they give up. But, I mean, even the depression studies, those studies went on for 6 to 8 weeks. And every day they were reconditioning their body to a new mind and beginning to select a new potential and change their brain. So then it may take 6 to 8 weeks for people to begin to change their own state of being and begin to make their own balance in their body. And we've seen it happen over and over again. Most people don't even know that they feel guilty. They don't even know that they feel unworthy. They don't even know that they feel depressed or feel victimized, because 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors and emotional reactions, beliefs, perceptions, pretty much on autopilot. That's 95% of most people. So their 5% is working against 95% of what they've memorized subconsciously. So the first step then is becoming conscious of your unconscious thoughts, becoming aware of your automatic behaviors, and then noticing and paying attention to the emotions that you feel every day. And as you begin to observe those states of mind and body, it means you're no longer the program. Now you're the consciousness observing the program, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You begin to pull out of your biology. So awareness then is the first step. So then most people, once they become conscious that they're living by certain emotions, the next question are, what are those emotions? And those emotions typically are connected to some past experience. Like, I'm this way because I got fired from my job 10 years ago. I am this way because my husband left me with 3 children. I am this way because I was in a serious accident 15 years ago. I am this way because I had this event happen to me. What that means from a biological standpoint is that that person has had a reaction to some experience. Once you feel a change in your internal chemistry emotionally, and you feel altered, you pay attention to what caused it in your outer environment. The brain takes a picture, and that's called a memory. So then we begin to remember the reasons why we are the way we are because of the past. But if you're still living by that emotion and it's 15 years later, from a biological standpoint, it means you haven't changed. The next point is the survival emotions, the emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress, are very addictive. Anger is addictive. Fear is addictive. Sadness is addictive. Resentment is addictive. Competition is addictive. Frustration is addictive. All of those emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress give the brain and body a rush of energy. So if an addiction is something you can't stop, and you happen to have a friend or a family member who's walking around suffering every single day of their life, and you say to them, why don't you stop? Or you're in the middle of an angry experience, you can't stop that, then on some level you're addicted, because an addiction is something you can't stop. So when people start to understand, oh my God, I'm addicted to my own frustration, I'm addicted to my own suffering, I'm addicted to my own guilt, all of a sudden they start becoming conscious of what they're doing to their brain and body. Show them how those very chemicals downregulate genes to create disease, and then get them beyond that by doing meditation. That's the moment then all of a sudden they begin to be greater than their biology. And we've measured this thousands of times in people, and it's without a doubt, I can say this from every single cell in my being, that a person is at their absolute best when they get beyond themselves. That's the bottom line. 70% of the time people are living by the hormones of stress, whether they know it or not. They're always anticipating the future based on the past. They're always having their attention on objects and people and things and places in the world, because that's where the danger is. The chemicals are jacking up their body, so their attention is on their body. So they think, based on their own experience, that they're their body, but they're not. They believe that they're their identity that's connected to relationships of people and things and places in their life, but they're not. Then when people start to live on autopilot and they get out of bed the same way and they brush their teeth with the same hand and they do all the same things every single day, and they've been doing that for 20 or 30 years, for the most part then, their body's on autopilot. It's in a predictable future based on what it's done in the past. So very few people are in the present moment. So then they're locked into a line of time, a linear line of time, where their future and their past seem to be exactly the same. So not a lot of people are present or in the present moment. And if you're not in the present moment, I assert that you're running some type of program, which means you're not present. The body's already programmed to be in the future or in the past. So then in the elegant moment of meditation, we can predict this now on a brain scan. There comes a moment where a person forgets about their body. They're so involved in their inner world that there is no body. They forget that they are an identity. They're not paying attention to the people they know and the places they go and the things they have to do or the things they own. They become no one. They become no thing. They go to nowhere, and they forget about their appointments in their past, and they become no time. And that is the moment they become pure consciousness. That is the moment that they begin to disconnect from their biology. And who you are, to answer that question, is a consciousness that's manipulating the brain and body to produce different levels of mind. And only when you are pure consciousness can you begin to change your body. Only when you are beyond your body can you heal your body. The body can't heal the body. You have to get beyond your body to heal your body. In order for you to create some new experience in your life, you got to get beyond the problems in your life. In order for you to create some new future event in some future time, you got to get beyond predictable linear time. And so if you're going to heal your body by thought alone, if you're going to create some experience in your life by thought alone, if you are going to create some new event in your future by thought alone, then you have to become thought alone. And that is the moment when you become pure consciousness, where you are nobody, no one, no thing, no where, and no time. That is the moment that you're no longer constrained by those laws. That is the moment your consciousness, free-willed, subjective human consciousness, merges with the quantum field, the objective universal consciousness. And when they come together and you come back to awareness, you take a piece of it with you and you become more like it. You become more willful. It has an amazing will. You become more mindful. It has an infinite mind. You become more conscious. It has a great consciousness. You become more loving. It's a lover of life. You become more giving. It's a giver of life. Its nature becomes your nature. And so teaching people how to do that is the art. We now know that there's certain ways to do that help people get there faster. First of all, people have to understand what coherence is and what incoherence is. I think that for the most part, the hormones of stress, again, living in survival, the moment you begin to become agitated or impatient or judgmental or resentful or frustrated or bitter or sad or guilty or whatever, what happens is the primitive nervous system switches on. You're mobilizing enormous amounts of energy for some threat in your external environment. So you can run from a predator. So you can hide from a predator. You could fight a predator. And that's really good for the short term. I mean, all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. But the problem is that when you keep turning on that stress response and you can't turn it off, now the body begins to move out of balance, because stress is when your body's knocked out of homeostasis. So when you turn on that stress response and you can't turn it off, now there begins to become some breakdowns in the body. So now you keep racing the heart because of traffic, because of your teenager, because of your finances, but there's no predator back there. But you're turning it on as if you're being chased constantly by some predator. The problem with that is that all of a sudden the heart that should beat coherently and rhythmically starts to beat very incoherent. It becomes arrhythmic. It becomes disintegrated. Its rhythm begins to change. At the same time, when you're living by the hormones of stress, the brain gets a rush of adrenaline, it gets an arousal, and the arousal then causes you to pay attention to your body, pay attention to your environment, pay attention to time, because if you're being chased by a predator, you better be thinking about your body, you better be thinking about where in your environment you're going to run, and you better be thinking about how much time you have to get there. Problem is, again, as you begin to keep firing those chemicals into your brain, and you shift your attention from a person or a problem or a thing or a place or an experience over and over again, each one of those things has neurological networks in your brain. As you begin to shift your attention, you begin to fire all these circuits and you begin to produce an incoherent brain. So when your brain's incoherent, you're incoherent. When your heart's incoherent, you don't feel good. So then is it possible then to begin to teach people how to create more coherence in their heart and in their brain? We've measured this thousands and thousands of times. So when you're under stress, you're focusing on matter, you're focusing on objects, you're focusing on things, you're narrowing your focus because the danger is around the corner, and you're paying attention to one thing. Really great for the short term. But if you keep doing that and you keep arousing the brain, you drive the brain into higher brain states, what's called high beta, and now it's like driving your sports car in first gear on the freeway. So then instead of focusing on matter and objects and things and narrowing your focus, if you teach people how to open their focus and sense space instead of matter, energy and information, when you open your focus, you can't analyze or think, you can't obsess, and brain waves tend to slow down, and not only slow down, but get highly organized and coherent. At the same time, the heart starts to get coherent, and the heart starts to affect the brain starts to affect the heart. And all of a sudden now, when you're living by stress, you're drawing from this invisible vital field of energy and turning it into chemistry, and you're robbing the body's vital energy. So now you're more matter and less energy, you're more particle and less wave, and you can exert very little effects in your life. When you begin to free yourself from the chains of those addictive emotions, you begin to open your heart, the field around your body. The heart begins to produce a magnetic field that sometimes can go to 9 meters wide. And if you can teach a person how to feel an elevated emotion and sustain it, and they begin to like drop pebbles in water over and over again, and they start to produce these beautiful waves. If they feel deeply and richly and profoundly, they're dropping big stones that are producing bigger waves. Now those waves are energy, and energy is frequency, and all frequency carries information like radio waves and cell phone waves. What those waves carry is your thought, your intent. So now the carrier of your own vibrational patterns to begin to carry information that is going to begin to influence matter. So if I'm sitting next to you and you're coherent and I'm coherent, when those two waves come together, they summate and create a bigger amplitude, and that's called a higher energy. That's called constructive interference. If you got 750 people in the room and they're all doing that, you're going to see energy go really high in the room. Now, if I'm coherent and you're coherent, but the person sitting next to us is not coherent, if you begin to move grandfather clocks in unison and 20 of them are moving together and one's moving out of rhythm, and we come back tomorrow, that one that's out of rhythm is going to just join and become entrained to the other one. So sooner or later, when we get that effect where there's enough people doing it, everybody starts to become entrained, and now there's a coherent, very, very palpable, measurable. We've measured the energy. The energy in the room is just off the chart. And now we have enough energy in the room for the miraculous and the supernatural to occur.